Hi friends, I'm Maria Meliora. Welcome to my channel. So this is another Get Ready with me. We're gonna chat about taking a year off. It's called different ways. I'm gonna start getting ready, and we'll just gonna like explore the possibilities and what does it really mean to take a year off. I've been envying the ability of people who belong to middle class to kind of do these things, you know, like taking a gap year between high school and university, and maybe like even transferring between universities, taking like, you know, like basically taking your sweet time with progression of your education and your career, making career switches, or actually actively not pursuing any particular structured career. To me personally, it was always a sign of monetary financial privilege, because I had to start working when I was in school, like high school basically, and it was really not easy. First of all, it was not safe for a petite girl like me, fairly attractive to the opposite sex, especially to all kinds of like old and not very scrupulous men. So for me to be in like an underage, first of all, there are like legal restrictions on that, and it really was not a safe place, because I didn't have the tools and the kind of mental agility and verbal and like behavioral tools to protect myself or even deal with any kind of harassment, which was pretty rampant. Not like rampant, it was like normal in Russia at the time. And so most of the time, the jobs I would get would be like a friend of a friend of a friend, right? Like, so it's like through a chain of kind of parent chains, and somebody would take a mercy and say like, all right, like seeing that, you know, the family has no money, it's basically just do something, I'll give you a little bit of money. More and more, I actually started to venture out and actually working for proper businesses. At some point, I think my first kind of like proper job that was not fully sponsored but somebody who knew somebody it was still like, I still got it through those chains, but it was actually like a job in a formal office. People were there because they were doing the work, and nobody was doing me any favors in a way. So that was in the logistics company. And ever since then, I had to work. When I was at university, even though I was one of the lucky ones, like one of the last generations. I don't know if it still exists. I don't think it does. One of the last generation of post-Soviet Union era that could get basically education in any university for free if I passed, you know, like a high bar for passing the tests. There was no unified tests. All universities had their own kind of like challenges that would put you through. And what's worse, you couldn't really apply to many, because at the time they only accepted you only can get like one formal diploma if you wish. Like, you couldn't produce copies of that, and you had to bring your high school diploma, whatever diploma you had from college or something, to the university. They would hold on to it to the period of trials and challenges and tests that they would organize for all prospective students. And almost all universities were doing those trials during the same period of time. It was like early summer. So basically, it was pretty much a crapshoot. You had to pick a university. Not only that, you had to pick a department. I'm just putting some base here, so kind of a neutral semi-matte lipstick, so I can kind of build on top of that. So I'm gonna put that story in the side. We'll continue on. I'll just tell you what I'm doing today. I'm only attempting, I'm not committing to actually for this to be a tutorial. We'll see what comes out of it. I'm attempting to do a neutral, kind of like neutrally beige makeup overall. And again, beige is a very approximate word. It would be beige with respect to the canvas that I'm dealing with, which is kind of like yellow pink at the time. Like right now I got some tan going on, but like largely my skin is very pink in tone, so I need to neutralize it with some more yellowish, slightly yellowish powders, so it's more like a neutral creamy beige tone. And I will try to apply like fine shadows in my collection that also create this kind of beige tone with dramatic lashes, maybe a wing, I don't know. But like the main thing that I'm attempting to do with this new palette that I got from Cover FX. A lot of people praise the blush duos by Cover FX, but not much I heard about their full-blown face palettes. Actually, it seems like everything is way too light. Maybe you'll see it better like this. So you see, it's the Cover FX makes them in light to medium and medium to dark, so there's not much variety there. Most of these highlighters are too dark for me to be a highlighter, but they give me an idea, which I borrowed from Anna Louise Poston. Many of you probably know it. If you don't, please go check her channel. She's amazing. She is a poet. She is a dressmaker. She is basically a full-blown artist who lives a vibrant artistic life. She does a lot of different kind of gigs as a self-employed entrepreneur, and it really shows in her content because she has a beautiful way of using language while talking about even the most mundane things. So if you're really kind of like, you have this like literary bug in you and you really are picky about how people speak and how they use language, please, you should check her out, because it's truly a pleasure for like auditory pleasure. Like it's a pleasure to listen to her content. Anyway, she was for a while obsessed with these kind of like glowy neutral cheeks. Neutral in a sense that it's not a neutral flush, right? Like pinky red or peachy, but actually neutral. It's like beigey, brown beige, red beige. So these kind of like architecturally neutral colors that are neither warm or cold, colors that could be even grayish a little bit, because you know, like that's where you meet that even middle when you're neither going red nor pink, nor warm nor cool. So when I got this palette, and I think I bought it from Mercari for like 17 bucks, I realized that this is just not gonna work as a highlighter. Like I dare say, I think even on the medium skin tone that could be a bit dark, but these are basically super glowy powders, right? With this kind of beige undertone. So what I'm gonna attempt to do with you today, we'll see what it looks like at the end. Neutral, maybe with some like blackness eye makeup, glowy, beigey cheeks, like all the way through. I'm gonna try to repeat what Anna used to do in some of your videos. I'm not sure if it's gonna work on my complexion or like on my structure of my face, but we'll see. And we'll figure out what to do with the lips later. Right now I'm just giving it some even coating. All right, back to the story. I promise you I do have a point. We'll get to it soon enough. As I told you, there were so many kind of stipulations and rules, and the system kind of really limited kids from exploring, if you wish. You had to prematurely commit to something, work your ass off to hopefully get in, and then you were set for 5 years. So the higher education back in Russia, I think they're now switching to the European system, which is 4 and 2, right? 4 years for the bachelor, 6 years to the master's. I noticed that in the States, and to be honest, I don't know the cultural or historic reasons for it, which I'm sure there are plenty, it's considered that you have high education if you have bachelor degree. That's not true in Russia. At least it didn't used to be, and as far as I know, not quite so in Europe either. So you would consider to have high education if you did 4-2. So 4 years of bachelor's and 2 years of specialized master program. And naturally, a lot of kids who were from middle-class families or kind of higher financial security level, they would either take a year in between the end of high school and the bachelor program, and most definitely either work or just, you know, do something else between the end of bachelor and the master's. And the master's when you actually kind of committed to a career. And that's at least how it used to be in Europe. And in Russia it was even worse, in the sense that you were committing to both when you were 17 in just one university. And if you didn't get in that summer, you have to wait another year. And culturally it was considered to be like a big fail. Like people, you know, like you hear about all those Palo Alto kids being suicidal because they didn't get into Stanford or Berkeley. So if you didn't get on your first summer to the only one university you could possibly go to trials for, it was considered to be a huge fail, and people, like kids, were really, really stressed out about being left on the sidelines. When I was going through that process, it was kind of like a very mixed time. The country was transitioning away from kind of like the Soviet Union structure of things were done into nobody knew what. Nobody knew what to model and what kind of corrections or changes to do, so it was a bit crazy. It was still true that universities were conducting their own trials, and they could, that's the thing, and that was a very much easy ticket to inequality of admissions. Because in the written exams, at least, I mean, if they didn't doctor what you wrote, then you could at least go to the appeals and maybe prove that you passed the grade. You could go and like argue that your written exam was worth something, especially in the technical disciplines like math. It was at least somewhat feasible. But in the trials that were verbal, and I actually do miss them a lot, because they can be abused, and I'll speak to you how. But generally, their oral exams, they are cool. They have something that tests just can't do. The problem is that they have to be very carefully administered and monitored for signs of bias and abuse. So that was exactly what was happening. A lot of universities, especially cool universities like Moscow State, which is like Harvard of Russia, right? So it's like one of the top, like, okay, it thinks it's top number one, but you know, as it goes with any Ivy League, all of them are cool. There are like a number of universities like that, but like Moscow State, every single person knows it in the country and outside of the country. So it's like the Oxford, the Harvard of the post-Russian Empire. So they could have their pick. Obviously, they had to accommodate all of the rich kids, right? And all of the kids of government officials, police officials, rich people, businessmen, because all of those people felt that, you know, they made their fortune, their kids deserve, it's their right to send them to the best school. So these really big universities with a lot of kind of honorable heritage, but the ones that also kind of propagated some of the privileges, and they kind of upheld privileges of certain classes, rich people, they were really struggling to figure out the balance of that. So we were transitioning out of free education for all toward more sort of capitalist scheme, and that would literally allow on a legal grounds for the rich kids to get education at Moscow State or like other Ivy League schools of Russia, but without kind of entering into obvious unfair competition that would be rigged, because, you know, like they had to get to that school. Basically, there's no way out. So in the way for the universities like that to kind of segment that, like, all right, your kids will get to this school, but we also need, you know, people who will make the school famous, people who will actually be great at what they do. So they kind of started separating, and they had like for-profit admissions that you just pay. You still had to pass some trials, but you know, there it gets a bit iffy. And there were open trials where anybody could try. All you had to do is basically take a risk that you'll be left on the sidelines for at least a year before you can apply to a university, and kind of like plus all of kind of public shame that came with that of failing to be admitted on your first try. So a lot of people, that's like the dirty truth that I learned later, a lot of people never tried. It's such a huge risk. The university could ask you, they had a lot of oral exams, so they could ask you anything. And the questions they ask you during the admissions, they could be kind of unfair. They could be outside of the scope of a normal school program. And like, it's just, if you already consider kids who are scared out of their mind, a lot of them underprivileged, their families cannot afford them any private or like for pay education. So this is not the case where there is even a chance then kids would go to court, like, and try to prove that the questions weren't fair or they were outside of the school program. That was just like, everybody understood in the form of oral exam, when there's this huge institution that kind of defends the elite, the intellectual elite of the whole country, there would be no way in hell that any other government institution or anyone would allow even a thought, a smear reputation of Moscow State. So if some injustices or biases or, not even scale of evaluating a prospective student was happening, it was kind of like shared understanding, well, a rotten luck. Like you would not get any justice. There was no point of appeals because there's too much at stake for the reputation of the university, and most kids just wouldn't even think of going there. And this is why, actually, surprisingly, I was surprised when I went and applied. It was purely random out of just some kind of bravado. I knew that I had a few weeks that I still could, like, I knew that if I didn't pass, if I didn't get A, like the highest grade on the first exam, then probably I would just immediately grab my documents and run to another university. I already knew which one. I had a backup plan. So that was just a kind of like bravado, like almost a joke. Ha ha, I'm applying to Harvard. Ha ha ha, I'm applying to Moscow State. Oh, it's gonna be fun. I was just curious. Like, what is this infamous, impossible to get to, super duper cool, privileged, highbrow university? Like, what's gonna happen there? Who are the people? Who are those chosen ones who teach there? How do they speak? How do they look? And the luck would have it that I got robbed during my first exam. So you had to leave all of your possessions so you would not cheat. Possessions in some like special room, then you go to another room and you take a written math exam. That was the first one. And my rotten luck was that I left all my possessions, and when I came back, my backpack was gone. So somebody who was in the same room taking the same math exam, either accidentally, though I really doubt it, picked up 2 backpacks and just walked out with mine. I had no money to get home, and it was like I lived pretty far from where the Moscow State was. I was scared out of my mind. I didn't know what to do, so I basically sat there like a stray puppy. I was sitting there, and a few students kind of took mercy on me, or like were curious what I was doing there, who I was waiting for. We started talking. Okay, the moment of truth. We're gonna apply the shimmery beige highlight. And I was like, all right, we need to go to the police, so you have a full report. So if you need to then recover any of your documents, and and still like to have it on record, maybe this person will do something again, and there will be a record of them doing like already like some kind of paper trail. So we went to the police, we did that. Well, I mean, that didn't really help. Nothing came out of it, really. But what happened then, when we did that, some professor stopped by and said, like, what's going on? What are you guys doing? He listened to my story, and he gave me money. He's like, all right, here's like 500 rubles or whatever. That will get you home today. And it's like, when was the last time you ate? And it's like, well, yesterday, because I didn't have time to eat early in the morning when I was taking the commute to take the math exam. I was like, oh, so you haven't eaten since yesterday? It's like, no. I'm like, all right, let's go to my lab. We'll fix you some sandwich or whatever. We went to his lab. I look ridiculous. To be honest, I don't like it. I don't like it single bit. We're gonna diffuse this. I'm gonna leave some of the shimmery cheek, but this gotta go. This is just, to me it looks clownish. So this attempt failed, but let's continue with the story. So it happened that he had a laser lab, and I've never seen like, have you ever seen like actual scientific lasers, like production, like highbrow lasers? It's like, it's a whole aggregate, like it's a whole machine, a thing. There are like 1,000 mirrors and like different deflectors and things like that. I was blown away. I've never seen anything like that. And he kind of like, he saw me being like looking at everything like this, and was like, huh, are you interested in this? And I was like, yeah, like this is fascinating. Can you show me how it works? So he kind of like, I don't remember, maybe like some of his students or like somebody showed me a few tricks, like, I don't know, like they burned like a piece of paper or whatever, just, you know, something cheap and funny. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. I've never seen anything like this. So you wait for it. So the next exam, I learned that I didn't get A on the math, so I needed to really rush and apply, like take my documents and apply to another university, so I would still, you know, get in that year, at least have a chance to do so. But I decided to just give it a go. It was like I was going pretty short, like I was stretching it really thin in terms of time. But I don't know why, I just like, well, it's not A, but it's like B plus. Maybe. It's like so close. It's like, all right, I'll go to the oral physics exam. Did I say like it was a physics department? So that was memorable and very very embarrassing experience. Basically, none of the questions that I got, so like you go there, it's an oral exam, you get a ticket, randomly pull it, it has several questions. I don't remember how exactly it used to be, maybe 2 or 3 theory questions in different parts of physics, and 1 or 2 practical problems to solve, like puzzles to solve, right? Like do some kind of calculation and derive something. And the problem was that with one of the theory questions, I knew about the phenomena, but I only knew about it in general terms, partially because I didn't really have time to prepare for the exam like other kids who went to specialized math and physics schools and actually were taught on the level of the first year of Moscow State University, kind of grade kind of classes. That was not in my school. That was not my case. So some of the stuff I just didn't know. It was we never really went there beyond kind of like surface level words. It was even worse with practical puzzles, like the problems that I had to solve. As I years later realized that they require differential calculus. If any of you know, it's highly unusual, at least in Russia, to get differential calculus. This is like advanced calculus stuff in school. But they had something about oscillators or whatever. Like there was some like 2nd degree differential equations. They're simple, but you still need to know about the concept, right? About this kind of tool, math tool, and how you use it. So I basically went back to perform the oral exam with an empty sheet. I had like no notes. So I told them all I knew. They were like 2 middle-aged men. Oh, they had so much fun at my expense. The blondie jokes, the women jokes, you name it. Back in the day, again, it was kind of like normalized that you had to, as a young woman, you had to take this kind of abuse in order to, you didn't even know that it was abuse. It was just like, well, yeah, we're all stupid, ha ha ha, but maybe me personally is smart enough, you know, to be part of XYZ, to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, to be a physicist. So that was kind of like the dynamic of it. But to be fair, besides kind of like stroking their egos at my expense, a terrified 70-year-old that came all the way out of nowhere to apply to the physics department, the home of most Nobel laureates that Russia produced ever, they actually didn't let it go. And in a few minutes, they kept asking me questions, basically. They kind of kept prodding and just seeing how I would adapt to new information. And eventually the professor that I met like a day or two earlier came in. I don't know how he found the room that I was like taking the exam, but he came in and he talked to them in private. I don't know what was said, but I can only guess that he put a word for me, for this dumb blonde. And they called me back. I was like, all right, so you didn't solve any of the problems? Like, no. I mean, I knew it was like it was like 10 scale, like 0 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 10 at best. I was like, I fucked it up. Like, there's like, basically at that point, I was embarrassed, but fairly relaxed because it was over. It was like so obvious it was over. They called me in back again, and I was like, all right. And they started explaining to me how to solve one of the problems that I had. And when they finally wrote down the differential equation, and I was just staring at it, and it's like, what is this? And like, what is what? And like these little dots. I was like, oh, you don't know what the dots are? I was like, no, I have no idea. And they kind of made it into a game. And they basically, it's like, oh, okay, if you put a dot over the x, and the x is like exponent of t or something like that, right? Like you get the same thing, but you get this little coefficient. And they kind of basically explained to me the chain of how do you differentiate known simple functions. And they made it into a game. And then they said, we showed you the rules of the game, let's play. I was losing exactly nothing at that point, so I was like, sure. So they started giving me different equations, and I attempted to solve them. Again, to be fair, despite being incredibly sexist, they did take their time. We spent probably at least an hour doing these kind of things and kind of browsing. And this is kind of the beauty of oral exam and the danger that you can really go where the conversation goes. You can help a student by taking them out of a stupor if they are stuck on some topic, and you can take them elsewhere. You can give them new information. You can really make it a very fluid and rich conversation where you can cover a lot of ground and a lot of skills to see how they adapt to new information, how they perform within the topic that they claim to know well, like all of the spectrum. So oddly enough, we went through all of that. And again, the historic fairness is that I didn't really pass the exam. Like, I didn't perform the part where you had to prove your expertise of what you already know. But I think what helped me is, first of all, like another authority kind of putting a good word for me. They really changed the way they treated me when that professor came and talked to them. I presume about me. I never actually met him ever again to really ask the question. And it's only my guess that I performed really well as showing adaptation to new information, that I could be a quick learner, if you wish. They gave me 10 out of 10. That started a different life, right? Like, it's a ticket to a different class, basically, of people. It's a different access to different people, to different information, to different everything. Something that I could never ever could have known if I stayed in my little town. But with that comes responsibility. So it was very stressful. I was very much behind on absolutely every single discipline compared to my peers. And I'm in probably most of the things that I have in my life. I'm just showing you what I'm going to use today. Slow Rock Pro, which is it? Number 3. I love these pro palettes. I think they are like worth every penny, but wait for the sales. You can usually reliably get the new ones or lightly used ones for, I would say, under $20, reliably so. Getting that kind of lucky ticket on one hand seems to be invaluable opportunity. Oh, let me grab a brush. On the other hand, it's only later in life I realize how crazy is the stress, the mental stress of constantly catching up, of constantly thinking and being actively reminded by men that you're a token, that you are like, what is it, like diversity hire or like diversity student, that like they're like, it's like some people live for confirming their biases. They don't care about how the world works and what kind of people exist in it. It's like they can't handle learning. It's crazy, but like I met a lot of super smart guys at physics department. They were really bad at learning. They had no curiosity whatsoever. They were so insecure and they kept trying to repeat the same patterns that they knew how to do. Like a lot of them didn't venture to different fields of physics or like related sciences, to never walked around neighboring buildings and always kind of like hang out in the physics department building. All of these kind of like self-imposed restrictions, including in terms of the people, right? Like what people are like, what women are like. Can they be different? Can they be, some women are very different from others, and maybe that's okay. So the truth should be told, if I'm being critical, I met a lot of smart people who were one-trick ponies. So the tricks were pretty impressive and sophisticated, but that was about it. They really mentally could not free themselves to learn, free themselves to explore, because for them anything about learning and exploring was equivalent of being wrong, right? Like oh, you didn't get it, so you have to learn about it. It's really strange. And it took me 16 years or more to realize that one of my strong skills is not what I know, actually. I never had a photographic memory. I was never particularly good at reciting, and like rehashing information. And some people are brilliant at that. And like I spent better part of my life being jealous of people who are good teachers or, good recitals, so they could store a lot of information and very reliably issue it appropriately within the context. And I felt like not having that was just, that's it. I could never be an expert in any field. I could never do anything, be successful at anything if I can't rehash, if I can't repeat the trick. And it took me forever, including a lot of alliances in my workplace, when my peers and a few very smart, kind of emotional intellect savvy bosses who told me that you do have all signs of professional excellence. It's not only one thing that comprises excellence. Your particular good skill is kind of working in the unknown phase, when nobody knows what to do, when you're required to pull things from different fields, from different ways of thinking, from like it's called interdisciplinary, right? You cannot really put those projects into any particular niche. It's not quite chemistry, it's not quite biology, it's not quite physics, it's not quite statistics, it's not quite econometrics. It's neither. And you kind of have to operate in that world trying to find a thread, right? Like trying to somehow put like a zero minimal viable theory, product, framework, like a scaffold of something on which you can build something more prominent, deep, more detailed and more stable. So these kind of first prototypes, like the finding the patterns, figuring out the first things, how to piece them together, apparently, again, I didn't know that, but as I was told by other people who are incredibly generous, if you think about it, so generous to pay attention to somebody else's work and find and share with them what people are good at. It's truly a very, very altruistic action to do, because most of the time we're concerned about our careers, our skills, our problems, right? So I'm infinitely grateful to those people who pointed it out to me. It's like, you're good at this. Like, you keep saying, like, you keep being scared, you keep saying that this is not working, that's not working. It's maybe so, nobody's perfect, and, there is something to improve, sure. But it's like not the point to eat yourself alive. Like, you do have things that other people wish they had. I don't know if you guys had these particular experiences. I feel like every person at least once in some circumstances did feel an imposter syndrome and was kind of like a fish out of water. It's just inordinate. It's like incredible amount of stress that you don't realize when you're in that situation, but you only realize years later. So it was inconceivable for me to take any break ever. Not between education levels, not between jobs, not between anything. I was just so wrapped up in being catch up and proving that not only that I'm good, but just proving that I deserve a chance to do the basics. Like, I just deserve to be there. Let's put aside a chance to lead, a chance to be the best or whatever, one of the best. No, just a chance to be there. Part of the crowd, if you wish. Like, being, my dream was to be in the middle. Like to be at least where the mediana is, like where the average lies. It took so many years that only at the age of 36, I contemplated a concept of a break, that I'm not gonna fall back into like data entry position, or like barista necessarily. And my friends kind of laugh at me because to them it seems ridiculous that a person with so many degrees and so many experiences in finance and product development and IT, tech, machine learning, this, that, and the content making and beauty industry, that a person would constantly talk about, well, I could at least apply and be a barista. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, nobody is it the only chance to work your ass off without taking any thoughtful breaks or be a barista? There's a world in between. But that was the mentality of a survivor, an imposter who just grabbing onto everything. That at any point, it's the mentality that at any point somebody will come in and attack me and kick me out off the team, or degrade me, and everybody will either agree, it's yeah, she was never really that good, which again, some people dared to say to my face and behind my back. That's another story. And there's so much, it took so much investment of other people in my level of confidence and my awareness of my strengths, that I actually, at the age of 36, I said, you know what? I do deserve a break. I can afford a break. I do want to actually, as again, one of my colleagues said brilliantly, that you don't want to be the person that runs from one job to another. It's building your career in forms of escaping trouble, escaping problems in one place and running away from the place to the first one that you land. You want to be a person that goes toward. And to be honest, I realized I've never done it. Like all the opportunities that were given to me, and some of them that I successfully pursued, right? Like I managed to grab onto them. Some of them I couldn't grab on, some of them were not presented to me. But those things that ended up working out, it was rarely that cognizant and like goal oriented. It sort of kind of happened. And in taking a gap year, Funemployment, Sabbatical, like there's so many names for it. It was the first time when I made a very me-centric, thoughtful, well-calculated, and celebratory decision toward something. I didn't apply for a job because like I needed money. Like I didn't go on a break because I was fired. You know what I mean? I know what I'm getting out of my decision, and I do know that I've handled difficulties before. I did prove myself before. And if I'm not too narrow in defining the future success, right, what I want, if I define success that I want to be a VP of data science for, I don't know, Microsoft, well, you know, the chances are slim to do it, let's say, in 2 years, right? Like, so if you're overly ambitious and overly specific, yes, you can just break your back and not get anywhere and not get where you want to do. But I know if I put forward an open-minded enough strategy where, you know, when we know what we want, but we're open to interpretations and kind of like diversions of the story, and inch of the way we're capable of checking in. It's like, is this, we're moving here now, is this, does it feel right? Yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, that could be cool. That's fine. You're not gonna regret it. Again, if you're putting a super specific, overly ambitious goal for yourself, you kind of like, it's like masochism, right? Like it's a self-imposed misery. So yeah, I took a gap year. I don't like the name gap year. It seems like it's something missing. I like the kind of sabbatical, but it comes from like academic standpoint, that you are the meaning of a sabbatical, that you're devoting yourself to developing your skills, right? Like developing your, in religion, it's more like devoting yourself to God, right? Like, or some pilgrimage and other experiences. In more like wider academic sense, it was like you might be traveling somewhere, teaching somewhere, you would be doing something, you might be doing you might not be doing anything productive or something you can monetize, but you are investing in a life experience, something that will feed you when you finish that period of your life. So that is such a precious moment for me. I feel like it's one of the, oddly enough, it's one of the biggest successes I've ever had in my life. And here my battery died. But I think we covered kind of the basis of how the events of all of my life led to these sabbatical that I took at such a mature age by European or sort of like first world standards. This is basically the first opportunity I had in the 36 years of my life. If you're curious, I can tell you about how I was preparing for it. I can tell you about how it's been going, because even though it was what I expected, a lot of things about it were not as I expected at all. There were a lot of delusions and kind of unescapable problems I discovered in the process of taking the sabbatical. So if you're curious for us to talk more about it, please leave a comment below. I don't think I really accomplished much with today's makeup. It turned out to be way more neutral. I was hoping for something a little bit more edgy within the rules of neutrality, but that will do. We'll try something a little bit more edgy next time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you like the story time and getting ready with me, please let me know in the comments down below. Please share the video if you enjoyed that in the social media, and I'll see you in the next one.